Vamos. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Tzadik Aleph. We're going to start all the way in the bottom on Daf Tzadik Amid Beis. Before we begin the new Mishnah, just for the sake of clarity, as we finished learning yesterday the dinim of a nida and of a zava and shivas nikiyim, when we spoke about a nida going to the mikveh at night, and that's actually a chumrah that the woman took upon themselves nowadays, regardless whether they have the status of a nida or whether they have the status of a zava. Actually, all women, like Rabbi Zayda says, B'nois Yisrael lechmiru al atzman, shafilo royes tipas dam kachadol, they're yesheva shivas nikiyim, and shivas nikiyim is connected to zava gedoyla, or zava would go to the mikveh during the day. Night is only connected to nida. Today, women take upon themselves both chumras. They go to the mikveh dafka at night, like a nida, after they count shivas nikiyim. But the moment they go to the mikveh, now for the halachis of taras hamishpacha, a woman is immediately mutaras labala, unlike the dinim we were learning yesterday. And that is when it comes to a woman eating kachim, there you have to have after mikveh head of shemesh. However, we're going to start the new Mishnah. The Mishnah is going to speak about 5 cases, 5 scenarios where you have individuals that when you shech the Pesach for them, there's a chance, there's a likelihood that they will become unfit to eat from the Korban Pesach. And we're going to see how that affects the halacha regarding shechting Pesach for them. And that's going to right away lead us into the next Mishnah, Daf Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph, which is a machlokes Tanoim, whether one is allowed to shech the Korban Pesach for only one individual. Now, obviously, there's an issue of noisar. So if one individual is unable to eat up the whole animal, which that would normally be the case, then lechatchila, you certainly should not do so. Question is, if you did shecht it for one individual, as long as that one individual can eat at least a kazayas, whether the fact that you shechted it only for one, whether that in itself invalidates the korban, and so is Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, as we'll learn the Psukim, versus Shitas Rabbi Yossi that holds, no, that if a Pesach was shechted for one individual, then that Pesach will be a valid korban Pesach. We're going to learn some dinim of the Isur of offering a korban to Hashem. This is for Yidden. Anywhere's outside the Mizbeach, whether it was the Mizbeach in the Mishkan, whether later eventually David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech, from when we built the Mizbeach in Yerushalayim, that from then we, the Jewish people, are never allowed to offer a sacrifice, an animal sacrifice to God on what's known as a bama, which is a private altar. We can only offer karbanos on the Mizbeach. Now what were to happen if someone would bring a korban on a bama? So first of all, anytime you take something that you consecrated, kachim, bachutz, you bring it, you chayiv kares. However, if what you brought outside the temple, because of whatever reason, had you brought it in the Beis HaMikdash, it anyways would not have been valid, so then you're not going to be chayiv kares for bringing it bachutz, but we're going to learn Rab Shimon that says, nevertheless, you're going to be chayiv alav without kares. We're going to see how that connects to the dinim of a Pesach. We're going to have on Tzadik Aleph Amud Beis a 3-way machlokes Tanoim regarding women and Korban Pesach. And really there are 3 options. Option number 1 is that they are obligated. Option number 2 is that they're not obligated, but if they do it, they get a mitzvah. It's called a reshus. It's elective. They can choose to do it, but they can choose to do it. And the third option is, as we'll see, that in certain scenarios, they may not even participate in a Korban Pesach. Now we're going to have a few very important nuance details from the Rishonim. We're going to have Tosfos is going to link the scenario of someone becoming bar mitzvah between the first and the Pesach, first Pesach and the second Pesach, regarding is that person now obligated to bring Pesach Sheni, even though that person was not even a bar mitzvah by Pesach Rishon. We're going to have another very important topic regarding a minor, and that is that we know that there is no halachic shlichus to a minor. A minor cannot become a proxy. Now, there is a din of the Zechia. Zechia means that even if you don't appoint me to be your representative, to be your agent, if I do something on your behalf that we know, the Torah says, it's only to your benefit. There is no downside for you. A person is allowed to acquire something for someone else. Zachin la'adam shaloi b'fanav. Can a minor acquire for someone else? We're going to learn again Sadik Aleph, nuance from the Rishonim, both Rashi and Tosfos, they both hold, unlike other Rishonim, that Zechia is mitam shlichus, which is why a minor will not be able to be Zeicha for an adult. We're going to learn about how one is not allowed to make a group for the Korban Pesach comprised only of converts, as we'll explain why. And at the end, God willing, we'll get to the bottom of Tzadik Aleph Amid Beis. We're going to be learning regarding the obligation of eating Pesach Matzah Marar is only on the first night of Pesach. And again, Chayva, Rishus, eating matzah, according to many Rishonim, throughout the whole Pesach, is a Rishus mitzvah, but you're not obligated. The obligation is only on the first night, and Chutz La'aretz on the first 2 nights of Pesach, the first 2 nights of the Seder. Chavre, without any further ado, let's go mamish to the last word on Daf Tzadik Amid Beis by the new Mishnah. It's amazing that both today, now we're beginning our daf with Oynan. We're going to begin, God willing, tomorrow also with Oynan. Oynan is the name that we use for the highest level of mourning. So if a person loses any one of one's 7 relatives for which a person is obligated to mourn for, which is father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, spouse, so then there are different phases of mourning. The highest one is called aninus in plural, or an oinan, someone who's highly consumed in grief. Now, an oinan midairaisa may not consume kachim. A person becomes an oinan when there is the passing of these 7 close relatives. When does the phase of oinan end and avelus begin? That's a big machlokes tanoim. There are some who hold that aninus is the day of the passing and then the subsequent night. Our Tana, the Tanoim in the here Pesachim hold that aninus midairaisa is only during the day, not during the following night. Connected to the sugi that we learned yesterday, that even if a person during the 14th, while they are shechting the Pesach, even if the person then cannot eat it, as long as they will be fit to eat it at night, right? We learned, for example, a person who already went to the mikvah, all they need is head of shemesh, and the sun sets automatically, so then you can shecht for them the Korban Pesach. On Oynan, on the 14th, our Mishnah will hold that even though at night, rabbinically, he or she will be an Oynan, but as we'll be learning, that sometimes the Chachamim waive a derabanan in order to allow a person to fulfill a mitzvah saseh that bears kares with it. Pesach, if a person doesn't bring Pesach, the chayiv kares. So the Chachamim waived aninus midrabanan, and therefore at night the person will be fit. But there's a fear. Let's learn the first line. Ha'oinan, Rashi adds to explain the Mishnah. We're speaking about an oinan who did not yet bury his or her relative. That's key, because just by the fact that they are an oinan will not prevent them from being included in the Pesach. Because again, even though at night aninus is midrabanan, the Chachamim will waive dini aninus. An oinan cannot eat kachim, and avul could. But here there is another fear. Since we are obligated to occupy ourselves in the burial of our 7 close relatives, now it doesn't mean that I have to become tummy to them, but there's a high chance that I will become tummy during the burial, tummy because of halachic contact, or I'll be under the same oil. So this oinan might become tamei meis. Now, if he will become tamei meis, then obviously they won't be allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. You got it? That's case number 1. All of the cases in the Mishnah, there are 5 cases, is speaking about a person who now, theoretically, they'll be fit to eat it at night, but there's a chance that they will no longer be fit. Daf Tzadik Aleph. The next case, Hamifakeach esagal, something that happened relatively a lot. A building collapses, a home collapses. So you have now a pile of rubble, and people, you would clear the pile. Hamifakeach, you're clearing the pile of rubble. Why are you clearing the pile of rubble? Because you are afraid that there might be a person trapped in there, and that person might be alive, that person might be deceased. Now, actually, hamifakeach esagal, it might even turn out that once you find a corpse in there, then it's going to reveal that you already were tummy during the shechita, as the Mishnah will mention. But before you find anyone, when you're still looking, based on the chazaka that right now you are tahar, you can say that I'm still tahar. but you are aware of the fact you're looking through the rubble, you might become Tamei Meis. And if you become Tamei Meis, then you can't eat the Korban Pesach. Case number 3, a technical case. Someone is in jail, but he was promised to be released on the 14th. If he'll be released, technically he'll be able to go to the Beis to Yerushalayim to eat the Pesach. But if at the end of the day they won't release him, then he won't be able to eat the Pesach if he's outside Yerushalayim. Case number 4, number 5 is you have a chayla or a zaken. They are old, they are ill. Yes, right now they are still able to eat a kazayas in the zman of achila, but their health is deteriorating, and a person is saying to them, "Oy gewalt, I don't know if by tonight you'll still be able to eat the kazayas in the prescribed amount of time." Shehem, now you choylum lechol kazayas. In all of these 5 cases, says the Mishnah, that yes, shoichatin aleihem, you could shecht for them. Why is that? Because right now they are becheskas tara. By the way, that includes the oinan, because the oinan, the oinan aside of the aninus issue, which again, midoi raisa, won't go at night, and the chachamim waived aninus. Right now, he didn't bury anyone yet. He's not tamei right now. So you could say that they'll still remain tahirim. You can include them in the count, but ba'al kulam ein sheichten aleim b'fnei atzman. But you can't shecht only for them. You have to acknowledge that this person might become unfit. So if he is the only person upon whom you're shechting, or people like him, again, parenthetically, can you shecht a Pesach only for one person? We'll see that in the next Mishnah. Even if you could, here you should not. Because still, Shema Yuvios a Pesach l'dei psul. Because maybe he will become unfit. And if he is the only person for whom you're shechting the Pesach, or people in that status from these 5 groups, then you have to say, you have to include other people. So at least if he won't be able to eat, someone will be able to eat. Now, lefika, since all the 5 are fit to eat at the moment of the shechita, im ira bahem psul, if indeed after you shechted, before they ate, they taka became unfit, which means that de facto they will not eat. Nevertheless, Puturim Alas is Pesach Sheni, which is a theme that we continue to repeat, which is good. On one hand, B'Shash Shchita, you can only slaughter for someone who is fit. But as long as they were fit, B'Shash Shchita, even if de facto they did not eat the Pesach, we're learning Amarav Gedel Amarav that Achila in MERCAVA, and therefore they won't have to bring Pesach Sheni, with one exception from the 5. Chutz min hamifakeach bagal. If he discovers a corpse in the rubble, if the rubble is in a way that it's in a circular pile, so then we say that the mace was there even during shechita. The person didn't know yet. So such a person, since he was tamei mitchilasoi, he will have to bring Pesach Sheni, because this is a gilui milsa that this person was already tamei b'shas shchita. Says Tosfos, well, maybe the corpse that you found died after the shchita. The top Tosfos, temelari mifakeach hagal nami nema chayav k'sheitzchol lefakeach. So these are the big sugyas in shas, cheskas hashtra, cheskas mikara, right? So v'yesh leimer kiven the matzoi meis. When you don't know if someone is deceased or not, right now, fakert, right now you say chazaka that he's tahar. Once now you see a mace, fakert, so then you say we have to halachically presume that the mace was already there the whole time. Okay, let's move on and the Gemara.
Rabbi, can I ask a quick question? You hear me, Rabbi?
Baruch, very low, very low.
Okay. The question is isn't the Onan not able to eat because, like Aaron, he couldn't eat because of wasn't that the main reason, or is it just because he's presumed to be Tomei?
Okay, very important. 2 separate things we're going to mix together. An Oinan may not eat sacrificial food. An Oinan, according to our Mishnah, is only during the day, not during the night. Rabbinically, you are an oinan, a person is an oinan on the night after the passing, but the rabbis waived it to allow the person to eat the Pesach. The problem is not that he's an oinan. The problem here is that since the person was not yet buried, that's what Rashi says, So and the close relative is obligated to be part of the burial. So there's a high chance that he will become tummy during the burial. Okay. If the person was buried already, then it's a non-issue. Then you can shecht only for an oinen. It's because since he might become tummy while he will bury, which is his duty. Now, he doesn't have to become tummy, but it normally happens.
Okay. I understand.
Okay, says the Gemara. I want you to know the case of a person who's in jail. Since it is a non-Jew who said that he will be freed, that's why halachically we may not fully trust it. So the Mishnah says, for example, you can't shecht only for such people. But if a Jew is sitting in a Jewish jail, now generally just to be aware that there's very little jail in the Torah. Barely a punishment. So Rashi gives examples. First example, that if a man was told that he must divorce his wife, we're speaking about when halacha paskint he must divorce his wife, and if he does not obey that order, then we are allowed to coerce him to say, I want to divorce her. One of the means of coercement, says Rashi, is to put him in jail. Just an example. So if a guy is in a Jewish jail, then shoichetin bifnei atzma, you can shecht only for him. Because if he was told that he's going to be freed on the 14th, given the Avtichinu, then we can trust that Mapik they will indeed release him. As it says, Yisrael, that the remnant of Israel, lo yasu avlo, that we will not perform iniquity. And that includes, we will not speak lies. So there's a certain ethic that we halachically presume that if an institution gave a word that they will do something, they will keep the word. Another detail. That if a Jew is in a Goyish jail, you cannot shecht a Pesach only for him or only for a group of other Jews in a non-Jewish jail because they may not be released and no one will eat the Pesach. That's why Amar and Elachutz L'chem, it's Beis Pagi. Again, Beis Pagi. Let's learn Beis Pagi is an area that marked the latter boundary of inside Jerusalem, outside Yerushalayim. So if he's outside Yerushalayim, if he won't be freed from jail, he will not be able to eat Korban Pesach. But if the jail is inside the city of Yerushalayim, then even if he's in a non-Jewish jail. Why? Because my tama, even if he won't be released, he's in Yerushalayim. The Pesach can be brought to him. My tama efsher the amtulei and the achalei. Weiter. Says the Mishnah lefikachim eira. And the Gemara is going to focus in on the last part of the Mishnah, that from the 5 cases is the one case of one who is clearing the rubble. That if indeed we discover a corpse retroactively, we paskin, the corpse was there during Shechita, and that person will have to bring Pesach Sheni Amar Rabba. Bar Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yechanan Loishano, a technical. When do we say that Elagal Ogol only if the rubble is circular? In other words, it's a round heap. So if there is a corpse, it's halachically, we're going to say you were on top of the corpse, because contact with corpse is either through touch, but there was no touch yet because you didn't see a corpse yet. So the only way you will become tamei is through tumas oil. Oil can happen in one of the 3 ways. Either there is a roof over the person and the source of tuma, or I go over the corpse, or the corpse goes over me. Here we're speaking about the person going over the corpse, the first wide line. But if you have a very long line, just because you find the corpse at a certain point in the line, it doesn't mean that you were over it during Shechita. Because Ema, Shechita, and only now did he go over it. And that's the Nakuda here, that as long as you were fit to eat the Korban Pesach during Shechita Pesach, even though you won't be allowed to eat it at night, you will be Yoitze Pesach Rishon. Tanya Nami Yachi, this detail, that Rab Shimon, Benoi, Shel, Rabbi Yechanan, Mordechay Omer, that Mefakeach Begal, Itim, Potter, Itim Chayiv. Sometimes when you discover the corpse, you will still be exempt. Not like our Mishnah that says you're Chayiv. It depends. Ketzad, Gal, Ogul. And the Nim says Tuma Tachtov, which is the case of our Mishnah, then you'll be chayv to make Pesach Sheni, based on this concept of Tosfos, that since now you find Tamei, we say you were Tamei. Gal Aruch, the Nim says Tuma Tachtov, then you're potter because Eimer Toyahoye B'Shah Shchita. Okay, now it's mamish, there's a hemshach of the Mishnah, that's beautiful. So now that we spoke about he cannot be the only guy, can you bring a Pesach for one person? So guys, there's an external issue, which is spoken about by the Rishonim. You can't shecht a carbon knowing there's going to be noiser. Correct. Now, what happens if there is an extraordinary oig malach habashan Jew that he can eat up a whole cow? You bring a lamb, he can eat the whole lamb. Let's say, is there an issue by shechting a carbon just for one person? Or even if it's just a normal person like us, we're not able to eat up a whole animal in one night. But still, the halacha is that aside of the terrible violation of allowing noiser to become created, if a carbon pesach was shechted for someone who can eat a kazayas, then it was a kosher carbon. So it's interesting, there's a machloikas tanoim whether you can shecht a pesach for one person. Look inside the Mishnah. It says the Mishnah, ein shechten a pesach ala yachid. It means if you did it, it's not valid. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Now this is based on psukim. However, the Tanach Rabbi Yossi is matir. Obviously, as long as that one person is fit to consume at least a kazayas. Can you do that lechatchila? According to most Rishonim, no, unless you can eat up the whole animal. Don't confuse that. This is just a question whether you can shecht for a yachid or not. Now, and Rabbi Yossi is proving, that's the way Rashi learns. Rabbi Yossi says, it's not about a individual or a group, even if you have 100 people. If not one of them on their own can eat a kazayas, then you're not allowed to shecht a carbon pesach. And if you did that, it's not valid. It has to be la'oichlav. So it's not about how many people. It's about, can you eat a kazayas or not? Okay. Now the second din in the Mishnah, and that is ve'ein oisim chabura.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Just according to what we're learning right now, does this mean that the last Mishnah was not Rabbi Yehuda, it was only Rabbi Yossi?
No, very good. So the Mishnah says that you should not shecht only for them. You know what that means, Danny? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it would mean you can shecht for two people that are oinanim. You would think so. It's not one, it's two. What happens if you have 10 oinanim? So on that, the Mishnah says, don't shecht for them. Because since they all might become tamei, no one is going to eat. Very good. But that's the hemshach. Very good. Second thing in the Mishnah is, guys, this sounds like the end of brachas. Remember over there by Zimun? Here it's similar. You can't make a group of women, slaves, and minors. Now, why? What does that mean? We'll see in the Gemara. Well, hold on. Let's begin with the beginning. So, Tanach Rabbanan, we're going to focus now on the machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Minayin she'ein shechten es hapesach ala yachid. Like, what's the issue over here? Where does Rabbi Yehuda get that from? So this is Gavaldik. At the end of the portion of the A, the pasuk is speaking about the prohibition of offering the Pesach in any city other than in Yerushalayim. The pasuk says, "Loisucha lizboyach es hapasach." You cannot offer the Pesach be'achad she'arecha in any one of your cities. That's the pshat. The Gemara is darshaning. We're taking out the word. We're ignoring the word she'arecha. And we're saying that you cannot slaughter the Pesach be'achad for one. How does he darshan that? Because ba'achad is extra. The Torah could have written, it would have meant the same thing. Ba'achad, you can't shecht it for one person. Rabbi Yossi says, no, that yachid, as long as the yachid can eat a kazayas, yachol, clear, as long as he can eat a kazayas, yes, shoichet in olive. And on the other hand, even if you have more than one, even if you have the complete number, if you have 10, but the ein yecholim la'achloi doesn't mean they can't eat it collectively. It means not one of those 10 on their own can eat at least a kazayas, then ain't shoichet in aleim. The ba'achad is extra. But Rabbi Yossi, hi ba'achad my avid lay. So here the Gemara says, he will darshan the way Rav Shimon darshans. Because it's a doichik to say this ba'achad for one, but listen to the drasha of Rav Shimon. The Tayin Rav Shimon Oimer. Now, when you read these words without Rashi, you mamish misunderstand Rav Shimon. So we spoke it out just to repeat what we spoke by the intro. Once, throughout our history, until we made the Mishkan, we were allowed to offer an animal sacrifice to Hashem by erecting a private altar known as a bama, a platform. Once we built the Mishkan we inaugurated the Mishkan on the first day of Nisan, right? Almost a year after we left Mitzrayim, until we crossed the Jordan River, then the only place that we can bring karbanos is in the Mishkan. For the next 14 years, then the Mishkan had a lesser amount of Kedusha because the Aron was with us in battle. Then we were allowed to offer karbanos on a bama, on a private altar. Mind you, the karbanos that we were allowed to offer were not communal karbanos. They were private, donated karbanos. Then for the next 369 years in Shiloh, then it's called the time of Isur Bamais. We were not allowed to offer karbanos in a private altar. Then for the next 57 years, Dafka, because the Aron Kodesh was captured, which is the way Shiloh came to an end, between Noiv and Giva in 57 years, the Aron was not in the right place, then it was Manheter Bamais. And then from when the Mizbech was built by David in Yerushalayim, forever, we, the Jewish people, we learned, by the way, we learned to Tosfos that says that Goyim are allowed to offer karbanos now on a bama. But we cannot bring it on a bama. Now, if you ask a Yid, okay, now what happens if a person is magdash an animal and they bring it on a bama? What penalty, what are they violating? Guys, they're violating shchutei chutz. Shchutei chutz means that they get kares for offering a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash. Step number one. Step number two, we learned all this in Zvachim, that when is a person chayiv kares for offering a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash, if that carbon, had he brought it in the Beis HaMikdash, it would have been a good carbon. What happens if this carbon is anyways invalidated? For example, it's mechusar zman. The animal is not 8 days old. So then the din is, he's not going to be chayiv kares. But was there any violation? That's what we begin. That's minayin lisboy. Oh, and including a carbon pesach. Just an example. A carbon pesach. You know what the mechusar zman of a carbon pesach is? Either the animal is beyond the year, right, too old or too young, or it's before Pesach. It's not on Erev Pesach. That will be the mechusar zman. Minayin lizaveach es pischoi. Rashi adds, not on the 14th, on a time where even bezman habayis, it's not the right time. Bebamas yachid, b'shas isur habamois, b'shas isur habamois. No, there's no kares. Because of shchutei chutz, because of the klal, shchutei chutz kares only if then offering it bifnim would have been good. Why did you bring it outside? If it's a Pesach, shaloi b'zmanoi, anyways you're not gonna, it's not valid. But how do you know that at least you're chayiv alav? That's this pasuk. So, which means that during the time that all of the Yidden are going in one gate, which is in Yerushalayim, because there was a proper Mizbeach, during that time, which is the time when you may not offer anything on a bama, even though it's mechusar zman, no kares, yes, lav. Yachal af b'shas heter bamis. Guys, b'shas heter bamis, the animals that we were then allowed to offer to Hashem were private, donated karbanos. A carbon pesach is not considered a carbon yachid because everyone is obligated to bring it, which, by the way, why it trumps Shabbos. So a pesach was never allowed to be brought, but will you be chayiv alav? So again, ba'achat she'arecha. That lo yomru, when you chayiv alav, ela b'shosher kol yisrael nechlasim b'shar echad. So the ba'achad is telling you that nuance, that bisman isur bamis, even if there's an invalidation in the carbon, if you bring it on the bama, you're going to be chayiv alav. When only bisman ba'achat she'arecha. Gavali. Oh, now, but Rabbi Yehuda agrees to everything we said above. But how does he learn it if he uses the ba'achad to tell you that you can't bring a carbon pesach for one Jew? So it says, he learns both dinim. You can't shech the carbon for a yachid, and there is the lav of shechting on the bama is not b'shas heter bamais, even if you brought a carbon pesach. Normally, you can't learn two things from one word here. You could, but let's go weiter. Now, Ula Rabbi Yosi, Memai de Lohachi, the Ka'amar Rab Shimon. Why did Rabbi Yosi choose to side with Rab Shimon? Teaching the Ba'achat for that nuance of bringing a Pesach. Bisman Isur Bamas, Bisman Heter Bamas, Yelav, no lav. Why didn't he learn it? Kid Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Huda Asa, that you can't shech the Pesach for one individual. So he says, Amar Lach, Rabbi Yosi says, I could not have. I had no option. Because since it says regarding the Pesach in Parshas Boy, Ish lefi achloi is lashon yachid. Taka gavaldik. according to what he eats. So you see that a Pesach can be brought for one person. End. Hold on. Now we learned to Rabbi Yehuda. So Ramilei Rav Ukva bar Chinana mi perishna. He asked the following contradiction to Rav. That how can we learn in our Mishnah? When there's a brisa that seems to say that Rabbi Yehuda says the opposite. It says in a brisa, Isha, regarding a woman, which is going to be a big part of today's Tzaddik Aleph Amud Beis. Barishain, guys, let's remember, Barishain means Bepesach Rishain, just to stay on our toes. Sometimes Barishain means on the first night. Sometimes Barishain here means on the first Pesach. Shoichtin alea bifnei atzma. You shecht only for her. Basheni oisen oisat tefilla lachedim. When it comes to the second Pesach, she has to be part of another group. Why? Very simple. If a woman is obligated to bring a Pesach, which is Shitas Rabbi Yehuda on Pesach Rishon, then you can shecht only for her. She's mechuyev. Pesach Sheni, Rabbi Yehuda holds she's allowed to choose to bring it. It's an elective mitzvah. It's not an obligatory mitzvah. If it's only elective, interesting, then you can't do it only for her. But he's speaking about one woman. So, okay, I get it. By Pesach Rishon, a woman is like a man. But didn't Rabbi Yehuda say you can't bring it for one? So answers Rava, Amarlei, no, you didn't understand. The Brisa wasn't focusing on the plural, on the singular. What the Brisa meant to say is that since Rabbi Yehuda holds that a woman is mechuyev to bring the Koren Pesach during Pesach Rishon, you can make a group only of women. By Pesach Sheni, you have to make a mixture because there has to be at least one Yid that's obligated to bring it for you to bring the Koren. Now let's go to the end of our Mishnah. Did we not learn in our Mishnah? And the Havamina of the Kash is, my love, did not the Mishnah mean that you can't make a group only of women, you can't make a group only of Avadim, you cannot make a group only of Ketanim? So now we have a new contradiction. Says the Gemara, you didn't understand the Mishnah. You can make a group only of women. You can make a group only of Avadim. You can make what you can't do. First of all, you can't make a group only of Ketanim because Ketanim are not obligated. Nashim and Avadim are, according to our Tana. The issue is you can't make a group of only Nashim, Avadim, and Ketanim. Nashim, Avadim, this we had in Brachas. Because if you have a Nashim and Avadim, there might be tiflus, there might be some sexual misconduct. If there's going to be Ketanim and Avadim, then it might lead to Pritzutza, Rashi says, to homosexuality. So you don't create a setting in which these things can be practiced, but just women, just Avadim is no problem. And now we clarified and we took away the contradiction. But now that we mentioned Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, that is machalik, that for Pesach Rishon, a woman is mechuyev. It's obligatory for her to partake in the Koren Pesach. Pesach Sheni, it's only Rishus, it's only elective. It's really a three-way machlokes Tanoim. Says the Gemara Gufa, Isha bar Risha in Pesach Rishon Shechtin Allah b'fnei atzma. Again, b'fnei atzma means not for her as her, for only for women. Basheni, you can't shecht a Koren Pesach only for women. Yes, they could join. Oisin, oisa, tefilla lachedim. She can become adjunct. She can become part of another group, but you can't shecht only for women. Again, Rabbi Yehuda clearly holds, David Rabbi Yehuda, that Pesach Rishon chayva, Pesach Sheni rishus. Now, don't say that what's the chiddush that she can become tefilla lachedim. We're going to see soon Rab Shimon who holds that you can't even include a woman as an option. We'll see in a moment. All of this is based on psukim. Rabbi Yosi Omer, opinion number 2, Isha basheni shoichtin ala b'fnei atzma. He holds that women are both mechuyev in Pesach Rishon, but he argues with Rabbi Yehuda on Pesach Sheni. So he begins with Pesach Sheni. And the Ein Sarach Loimer, of course, Barishon. She's obligated. Rab Shimon Omer, Herzachaim. Pesach Rishon, she's not mechuyev, but it's reshus, so you can connect her to a group. Oisen, oisat tefilla, it's elective for Pesach Rishon. Velachedim, but basheni, when it comes to the second Pesach, ein shoichtin aleh kol ikar, she may not even join a group at all. And b'maykom mifligi, and this is a machlokes based on psukim. And let's begin with the Seder with Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara Rabbi Yehuda Sava, that when it says in Parshas Boy, b'michsas nefashos, according to the number of the people, what word does Hashem use for people? Not ish, nefashos. Men and women are equally nefashos. Afilu nashim. The chitema, who adin should automatically be basheni, as we'll see soon from Rabbi Yossi, because it says in Parshas Baal Loischa that kuchol chukas hapesach yasa oisoi pesach sheni. Normally it's the same rules. No. However, says Rabbi Yehuda, since it says in Parshas Baal Loischa regarding pesach sheni that chetoi yisa ha'ish hahu. If a man who didn't bring the first one doesn't bring the second one, he's going to have to bear that sin. He not nefesh. Ha'ish, ish in isholoi. Now, if the Torah is excluding women, so then bited on the other side. Why doesn't he say like Rav Shimon? No, because there is this hekesh in Bahaloischa that says Kochol Chukas HaPesach Yasa Oisoi, which compares Sheni to the Rishon. So therefore, we do this middle ground. She's obligated on the first. You can't exclude her from the second. You can't only make it for women, but if she wants to join a group, if she did not bring Pesach Rishon, then let's fail Ba'alma.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi, quick question. Bifnei Atzma, is that as a Yechida, or because wouldn't that contradict the Mishnah?
That depends, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. So according to Rabbi Yossi, yes, Bifnei Atzma, I know, Danny brought that up before. These are interrelated machloikesim. We're quoting Rabbi Yehuda. That's what the Rabbi answered. He means a group of women. Svika, you're okay? In other words, we just had a machloikas. We're not going to focus on every machloikas every time.
Got it. Okay. So Bifnei Atzma is what we're talking over here with the group of women. Is that what we're saying?
According to Rabbi Yehuda.
Okay.
If another Tana were to agree with Rabbi Yossi in that Mishnah, but agree here with Rabbi Yehuda, he would say, bring it only for one woman. Okay. Weiter. Rabbi Yossi, my tamo, because again, it says regarding Pesach Rishon, b'michsas nefashos, not b'michsas anoshim. Nefashos afilu ish. And it says regarding Pesach Sheni, the nichraso hanefesh hahi miyisrael. Forget about the gechol chukas haPesach. The Torah in Pesach Sheni uses the word nefesh in the negative, that if you don't bring it, nefesh means even woman. The Torah does say, that's a whole different din. The ho'ish is not to exclude a woman, a bomba statement. You would think a cotton is chayv kodes. No, he's not chayv kodes. Now, what kind of statement is that? Look inside the second Tosfos. Tosfos says, Tema, it's a wonder. Amai itzrich? You need a pasuk to tell you that if a minor doesn't bring Pesach Sheni, he's not chayv kodes. Heichon matzinu shechayv cotton b'mitzvahs. Guys, this is gavaldik. Says Tosfos v'yesh loimar. Yeah. The itzrach. We're speaking about a minor that by Pesach Sheni is no longer a minor. Lekatan shehigdil ben shnei psachim. Now he's an adult. How do you view Pesach Sheni? If you would view Pesach Sheni as a standalone mitzvah, then he would be chayv kodes. That's the whole chiddush. Kamash Malan, that Sheni is tashlumen l'rishonu. This is big. Back in the Gemara. Okay.
Wait, so just to clarify, according to that explanation, the katan that turned bar mitzvah in between, he has to, but if he doesn't do it, there's no karas. That's what we're...
No, according to the way Tosfos learns, he doesn't have to. The question is, can you even connect him to another korban? Because tashlumen means that if you're not obligated in the principle, how are you chayiv to make tashlumen, to complement? He's completely exempt.
So he's not even allowed to join for a korban Pesach.
Maybe not even that. That's the big discussion over here. And by the way, the same thing is regarding a convert, someone who converts between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. Convert is even maybe less than a katan, because a katan, his father was obligated to be machanachim. He had some connection. There's a sikh of the Rebbe on this. Let's go right. Rab Shimon like this. Now he pulled out of his hat. He found the word ish. Now no one knows who state ish by Pesach Rishon. We're going to have to see that. The Gemara is going to ask where it says ish. Ish in ishaloi. So to begin with, she's never obligated. And well, if ish excludes women, why doesn't Rab Shimon go all the way to the other extreme? Afilu tefilla nami loy. Rab Shimon does agree that the Torah also writes the words nefashos. Ahani lei b'michsas nefasha is to at least allow a woman to enjoy it as a tefillah. I v'chitema afilu b'sheina nami, allow them to attach themselves to a group. No, because miyat rachmana b'sheni, the Torah invited excluded them, because by sheni nachamal the Torah says so ish. Tichsiv cheta yisa ish. Ish in, ish aloi. Now, if the Torah is excluding women even more by Pesach Sheni, the Gemara clarifies, exactly from what are we excluding them from? The Torah is not excluding women b'sheni from a chiyuv because hashta b'rishoin loi, because Rab Shimon found the ish by rishoin. So b'sheni miboya elalab, that the additional ish by sheni is to tell you that they can't even attach themselves to another group. My ish to come at Rab Shimon. Where do you have ish? Open up a chumash, find me ish. Because it says in the beginning, v'yichuluhem ish celebase avos. That ish cannot be used. How? Why? How me boy leichad Rabbi Yitzchak the Omar ish zoiche ve'ein katan zoiche. Aha, guys, like this. Number one, when you do something for yourself, if you're an adult, you have the koyach to make a kinyan, to acquire. Number two, normally I can appoint you as my shliach. However, there's no shlichus to a minor. Now the sugi of shlichus we'll learn in the beginning of Kedushin, Perek Sheni, but then there's another principle called tzchiyah. So I can appoint someone as my proxy, shlichus. Tzchiyah means that even if I did not appoint anyone to act on my behalf, if they unilaterally are doing something that's only to my benefit, normally what they did for me is effective. So if someone finds a lost article and they pick it up for me, I will own it. Because Zachac la'adam even shaloi b'fanav. Can a minor do zechiyah? Says Rashi here, no, because since Rashi and Tosfos learn that zechiyah is mitam shlichus, that's the din of Rabbi Yitzchak. So just like a katan cannot be appointed as a shliach, when someone is going to acquire a lamb, who will acquire it? It has to be an adult and not a minor. And that adds Tosfos, 1, 2, 3, the fourth Tosfos over here. Why did we even need to have a pasuk? Since Tosfos goes further. Since we know ein shlichus lekatan, so there, and it's a given that zechiyah is mitam shlichus, so we know a katan cannot be zoicha. So Tosfos says, I have all the nuance. There are two types of zechiyah. When something is a lost article, like my example, and I pick it up for you, that's a weaker type of me acquiring it for you. That we know a katan can do. But if someone sells a lamb to me, I'm the minor. So, but the seller is an adult. So maybe since the seller is an adult, it's called das acheres. There's someone else that has das, and if the minor is buying it on behalf of another adult, maybe a katan will be an effective, so to say, channel, because of this concept of das acheres makna oisoi. These are big topics. I know it's late, but let's go weiter. Just at least we heard the words. So for that, Rabbi Yitzchak learns not even das acheres makna oisoi works through a katan, all because Rashi Tosfos chiyah mitam shlichus. So that's the ish. Elo, so that can't be the ish of Rab Shimon. Elo, what ish did he see in Pesach Rishon, from which he learned that women are excluded from bringing as a chiyuv Pesach Rishon? Because since it says ish lefi achloi. Remember on the Amud Aleph? And so the Torah wrote lefi achloi. Singular, ish lefi achloi. One second. Let's go back to Amud Aleph. Me the Rabbi Yosi, as we said, Rabbi Yosi follows Rab Shimon, that the ba'achad is not like Rabbi Yehuda. How does he teach the ba'achad? He teaches the ba'achad to tell you about the love, bisman iser b'amais, bisman heter b'amais. Now that whole limud of Rab Shimon is predicated on Rab Shimon not interpreting ba'achad to teach you can't bring a Pesach for one person. Had Rab Shimon learned that you cannot bring a Pesach for one individual, and that is what the ba'achad means, that's so more closer to the pshat than what Rab Shimon said, that speaking of Isman Isser Bama, Isman Heter Bama, Rab Shimon never would have said what he said had he heard like Rabbi Yehuda. But Rab Shimon, Nami, he holds like Rabbi Yosi. He cannot learn the ba'achad closer to the pshat. So the problem is, v'hahu mi boyale fakert. The ish lefi achloi is the source that you could bring the Pesach for one individual. How can you use the ish to exclude women when we need the ish lefi achloi to tell you that you can bring it for an individual? Answers the Gemara, you're right. Rab Shimon holds like Rabbi Yossi, for sure. And how does you know you can bring it for a yachid? Because the Torah uses the singular, but the Torah did not need to use the word ish. The Torah could have just used the words lefi achloi. That's also in the singular, not lefi achlam. Lefi achloi. The lefi achloi means yachid. The lefi achloi did not allow Rab Shimon to learn the ba'achad like Rabbi Yehuda. So he needed to stretch it to iser bamis, heter bamis, and the ish is still extra, and we can use it. And we use it to exclude women. Which is also Lashon Yachid by Ish, Mamina, Tartem. Now, Vaita says the Gemara.
Rabbi, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
On this explanation of Shimon, of the women with being, they cannot be Tefilla. Does that mean like normally we say mitzvah saseh shazman grama, women are not obligated in, so they don't have to sit in a sukkah, but if they want, they could sit in the sukkah.
We're going to learn not that far from now, Danny. That's what you just said. Now is a machlokes tanoim. Yes, we are observant Jews, so we know that the poil women sit in the sukkah, and by Ashkenazim they make a bracha to sit in the sukkah.
So is he saying, according to Reb Shimon, that women are not allowed to eat from the carbon Pesach? That's his
sheni. They cannot eat Pesach sheni. Correct.
Well, Reb Shimon is
obligated. You're obligated. Not left underneath it, you're not obligated, but you can elect to do it. And if you do it, you're doing a mitzvah. And if you're doing a mitzvah, you can be included. And underneath that is that it's not for you. Now, by Yisuka, right? Big deal. Even there's a Baltoisef. Here, you have to shecht for someone who's shaykh to it. You cannot include in the group. Everyone has to be part of a group. Rab Shimon holds that she was so excluded from Pesach Sheni, she cannot even join a group. B'diyuk. Rabbi Yossi says she's chayiv both, even though the Braisa goes in the other order. She's chayiv in both. Rabbi Yehuda goes, she's chayiv in the first, elective in the second. Rabbi Shimon says elective in the first, excluded from the second. Now, come on, Ozloha the Amar Rabbi Elazar, that Isha Barisha in Chayva Ubesheni Reshus. Now these words won't work, and it's Doicha Shabbos. Now, guys, listen. Doicha Shabbos is only if you're chayiv. If you're not chayiv, even if you get the mitzvah, if you do it, it's not strong enough to override the Shabbos. So the Gemara says, eat a shus, before we determine who's the author, but if it's the shus, how can it be Doicha Shabbos? So you have to reformulate. The text became corrupted. What Rabbi Elazar is saying is that Barasheni eat a shus, Barisha in Chayva, and Doicha Shabbos. This is for women. Who can Rabbi Yehuda? But guys, now we're hopping something interesting. In other words, that if it's on Shabbos and you are including a woman, what he's saying is you can't include a woman on Shabbos, even if otherwise you could, because if it's Rishus on Shabbos, it's not Doicha Shabbos.
But it's not just her. You're including her with a group.
I hear you. I'm just came to my mind. I want to throw it out there. Could be it's connected to this. Okay, right. Now, bottom line is, right, if you hold that women are the shus, you cannot make a group only of women. The Mishnah spoke about a whole side topic. You can't create a group of people where there might be some misbehavior. Now we're going menakotza lakotza. And this is a very important statement. Ein oisim chabura shekula gedim. Gedim and many people in halacha linked us to Balei Tshuva are very careful in keeping the mitzvahs. Now, to their detriment, they don't have that much tradition because they never saw it happening for many, many years. So there's so many questions. I just one example. The Torah says, don't eat it no. So when you learn without Torah Shabbat Peh, when you learn it with ignorance, no means you can't eat it raw. How did we teach the whole sugi that no means you can't eat it partially roasted? It has to be fully roasted. Now I'm asking you, how would you determine, Samach, you're a chef, how would you know it's already called fully roasted? How would you know that? I would not know that. We don't know because we didn't have a Koren Pesach yet in our lifetimes. No, if you have a tradition, if I saw it, I know this is already considered good enough to eat. If people don't know that, so people who don't care, God forbid, they'll eat it anyways. But when you have a convert, is someone who's committed to keep the mitzvahs. He doesn't have the tradition. He's going to be so afraid that maybe it's not good yet. He's going to burn it until you can't eat it. That's one example. Or you're going to be so machmir that you're going to end up ruining it. So don't make a group of only Gedim Shema, Yidag the Kubai. They're going to be they're going to make it perfect. And what's going to happen? The Yavila de Psul. That they'll themselves bring it to invalidation. All right, Tanach Rabbanan. Going to Inyan, and what we're learning now is even Shaykh to Yidden and Golos, but it's good that we're learning about Hilchas el Mashiach. Says the Gemara, Tanach Rabbanan, Pesach, Umatzah, Umarer. Now really, they have to be eaten together. Even though we paskin that even when there is no Pesach, matzah is a standalone mitzvah. Chiyuv d'oraisa. Marer certainly is a chiyuv d'Rabbanan. But let's go back. When you have the Beis Hamikdash, when you have a Korban Pesach, so Pesach, umatzah, umarer. Barishain, we're speaking about men and women. Choiva. Barishan here doesn't mean Pesach Rishon. That's where people get tripped up. Barishan here means on the first night. Mikan ve'elach rishus. Now, guys, Pesach cannot be rishus. You're not allowed to bring a Korban Pesach if it's not Barishan. So we're going to clarify this in a moment. Rab Shimon Oimer, going back to his shita.
And Marar, does anybody eat Marar after the first night? I mean, not the second night in the Chutzlars, but the rest of Pesach, who eats Marar?
I was going to ask all this. It doesn't fit. Very good. And now Rab Shimon's comment, obviously, is even on the first night. He says, you are saying the first night. No, ba'anoshim chayva, as we just learned above. But women, now Rab Shimon allows women, if they choose, to join Pesach Rishon. So and they get the mitzvah, but they're not obligated. Ba'anoshim rishus. And now the problem is, ahaya l'chayda ziva kash on the Tanakama. Like, what is the Tanakama talking about? Ilema Pesach. Ilema Pesach. Pesach kol shiva me'ikah. He said to you, Pesach matzah u'marer. What is he saying? That Pesach is rishus? No. Ela matzah u'marer. If he's going to matzah u'marer, so how do you? The flow doesn't go. So when it says that Shimon says regarding matzah and marer, if we're speaking about that, ba'anoshim chayve b'anoshim rishus. No. Leis leilet Rab Shimon. Hada Amar Abu Lazar. This is an important rule. Nashim chayavois b'achilas matzah dvar Torah. Shenemar. Now, guys, you would argue, how can you say women are obligated to eat matzah? Isn't matzah your classical positive commandment that's time-bound? Mitzvahs asay, shazman gerama, the Gemara and the Mishnah and Kedushim, they should be exempt. No, not over here, because of this limud. Women are obligated to eat matzah biblically because it says, together, juxtapose, don't eat chametz for 7 days, lo yisrael chametz, and then it says, for 7 days, eat matzah. The Torah puts together the asay. It's very similar to Shabbos. Shomer v'zocher b'dibur echad. Women are obligated to keep the positives of Shabbos because they're obligated to keep all negative commandments.
Rabbi, over there we learned the Tosafos that it's the Sefer that's the teacher to the Reisha, right? No.
Very good, Shkrech, for remembering, but it goes both ways. But normally it's that way. Very good, very good observation. We learned it not that long ago that whenever there's a hekish, who teaches whom initially. But also we learned, Yaakov, that whenever you have a hekesh, it goes both ways. Always. Good.
So then what's the significance of that Tosfos?
That when you have a hekesh, and if you would go in one direction, you would come to one outcome. If you go in the opposite direction, you would go into the opposite outcome. So you have to choose which direction you're going. For that, you have the Tosfos. Here, nothing is contradicting anything.
No.
No, but you can't go in the opposite outcome. What are you going to say? That you can't say that women are exempt from a negative commandment. It's a non-option here. Women are obligated to keep all the negative commandments. Okay, so very good. So so says Rabbi Lazar, anyone who's included in the law is obligating in matzah. And therefore, because that's the rule. Women are obligated to keep all of the negative commandments. So therefore, biblically, they are obligated to eat matzah. So how can Rab Shimon say that eating matzah for women is reshus? Elo, Pesach, matzah, umaroid. Barishan means first night is a chayva. Mikan ve'elach, guys, mikan ve'elach, Danny is only going to matzah and matzah. And reshus. Now, the question is, the matzah reshus and the matzah reshus is not exactly the same. In halacha, you can have chrein, knock yourself out. But you should know that even though we are saying that matzah is reshus, even though God says eat matzah for 7 days, but there's another pasuk from where we learned it's only ba'erev. We're going to get to, I think we didn't learn it yet inside the Gemara. Eating matzah is only on the night of the Seder. But if you eat matzah during the rest of Pesach, guys, you are getting a mitzvah. You're not obligated. That's the reason why people are medagdik to eat matzah. Isuras Moshiach. Al pi nigla, there's a reason for that. To eat matzah again, chaparayim. Ad kedei kach that the Rishonim ask, why don't you make a bracha? Even during the other days of Pesach, even though it's Rishus. And they ask by Sukkah, you don't have to eat a meal, but if you eat a meal, you make a bracha to sit in the Sukkah. If it's not Shabbos, during the week, I don't have to eat a meal. It's Rishus, but I'm doing a mitzvah. Eating matzah is a mitzvah. It's a Rishus mitzvah. And there's answers for that, that since really the mitzvah is not to eat in the sukkah, the mitzvah is to live in the sukkah, and we are obligated to live in the sukkah all the 7 days. The bracha you make when you eat. So even though you're not mechoyev to eat, but when you're making the bracha on sukkahs, you're doing it for the living in the sukkah. Matzah, if it's not, they say that you don't have to eat. You can eat the apples the whole Pesach. You don't have to eat the matzah. But anyways, coming back over here, Danny, just to your point, that the reshus of matzah and the reshus of matzah is not the same. But the commonality is that it's not choiva. And on this says Rab Shimon Omer, Pesach, he's not focusing on the matzah umarar. He agrees with the matzah umarar. Regarding the Pesach, l'shita only men are obligated to eat the Pesach, and women, because of his ish, he excludes women from the chayv. Benashim is reshus gevaldik. Chadra to be continued. I should have said it for the other recording, that just to understand that the Rabbeim, when they spoke about that matzah is michla de mehemnusa and matzah is michla da asfasa, even though that the Zohar writes that particularly, right, the first night it's matzah of faith, the second night it's matzah of feeling, it's connected to the matzah of the whole Pesach. Clearly, it's the reshus sometimes means it's not a mitzvah. Here, reshus by matzah means you're not obligated, but if you do it, you get a mitzvah. Sometimes the achronim use the words, there's a mitzvah chiyuvis, and then there's a mitzvah kiyumis. Mitzvah chiyuvis means you have to. Mitzvah kiyumis means that if you do it, you're mekayim a mitzvah, but you're not mechuyev. And that would be eating matzah during the rest of Pesach. But there is an inyan to eat matzah, just to know that. It's not that there's no mitzvah. You're not mechuyev, but you get a mitzvah. And coming back to women, just to know, so that there's 2 steps. Step number 1 is machlokas tanoim, whether women are allowed to keep positive mitzvahs that they're not commanded to keep. I think it's Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi.
Are they allowed to?
The machlokas tanoim, one Tana holds that you're chayiv bal tosef, you're chayiv in isur of bal tosef. We paskin that they are allowed to. Then there's the machlokas Rashi Tosfos. If they are allowed to, can they make a bracha? And that machlokas Rashi Tosfos is now Ashkenaz that among the mechaber, that we say they make a bracha. We say they make a bracha. Tzivanu, they're not commanded. It goes to the Jewish people. And the Sfardim don't allow women to make a bracha. And then there's the big question, like for example, do the Sfardim, when they daven Shema, the women, do they make birchas kriya Shema? We spoke about this in brachas. Rabbi Yosef wrote a good shuv on that. In other words, Sfardim, normally the women, if they shake the lulav, they don't make a bracha. When we go on Meftzoim, we should not give them to make a bracha. But birchas kriya Shema, it's not your classical birchas ha-mitzvahs. You're not saying Ashek Yishorav mitzvahs v'tzivanu likros Shema. We never say that. So therefore, some Sfardish poskim say that even the Sfardish women, if they choose to say the Shema, they are allowed to say Yoitzer Oid and Avas Olam. And others say they should not. They can say the Shema, but they can't say the bracha. It's still called Birchais Kriya Shema, and Kriya Shema is a mitzvah asesha as mangarama that women are exempt. If they, it's reshus for them. It's not choiva.
Thank you.
To everyone. We only have another week of this, guys. Chaparayin, and then it's going to be a long time until we come back.